we were inquiring as to how much understanding ancient peoples may have had about longitude and the great circles. Every loop of longitude around the planet is a great circle. But there are other great circles. Any kind of circle around the planet that takes the center of the planet, the center of the earth as the center, is a great circle. And they're important because in Euclidean geometry we say the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. But what happens if you're moving over a spherical surface, a globe? Then the shortest distance between two lines should be an arc on a great circle. If you're flying a plane from Chicago to Tokyo, maybe the shortest distance is to go over the North Pole or through the Arctic Circle, as it were, because you're flying not in two-dimensional space, but in three-dimensional space. And so you might be taking an arc on a great circle. So this mathematics is very relevant to aviation and air travel around the globe. Very relevant to the routes that pilots take in getting from one place to another place without running out of fuel and things like that. Now, you can draw a great circle that goes through Giza, where the Great Pyramid is, which is at 30 degrees latitude north. Now, the interesting thing about 30 degrees north, or 30 degrees of latitude, is that because of trigonometry, and I won't go into the detail, it's half the radius of the Earth. Also, in the case of Giza, 30 degrees north, it's the centre of mass of all the continental mass on the planet. It's the centre of mass. So it seems to be a site that's been well chosen. You could draw a great circle that goes up around, imagine tracing a line around our planet. 30 degrees north is about as high as it goes, and then it dips around to about 30 degrees south. What's down there on the other side of the planet? Well, around there's a little place called Easter Island. You might have heard of it. All there on its lonesome in the Southeast Pacific with those haunting statues of the Moai.
All those heads.
All those heads. That's the one, yes. Yes. And then bring the line of the circle back up. And we're familiar with this in astronomy too, because if we think of the celestial sphere and the celestial equator, which is an extension of the Earth's equator into space, imagined on the inside of a sphere, then the ecliptic of the sun and the planets is set off at an angle. It's a great circle. It's centered on the Earth, but it's set off at an angle. It's not in alignment with the equator, but on a tilt, but it's still doing a big circle around a sphere. If you tilted the sphere, it would be the equator of the sphere, or it could be any line of longitude you wanted. Now, along this circle, we see a number of significant ancient sites, some of which have a World Heritage listing, but far deeper than that. They're of immense significance to their peoples and to the culture of the world. You've got this circle that I've just described will go through Giza, it will go through Petra in Jordan.
Amazing place, Petra.
Persepolis, which is the ancient capital of Persia. Right? It was their foundational capital of the Persian Empire, where Persian culture emanates. It's the sort of wellspring. Eventually it was burned down by Alexander the Great. You go further, you go through Mohenjo-Daro, where the Indus Valley civilization arose in India, part of the Aryan peoples. You go further along, you get to Angkor Wat, which is this great temple complex in the jungles of Cambodia. Really important to their people. And you keep going along, you get to Easter Island in the Pacific, and then you're coming up through Peru. You've got a whole lot of areas not far from Lake Titicaca. You've got the Nazca, where you've got those Nazca lines on the ground that have been mysterious for a long time, since they were discovered. And you can see them best from the air. People have speculated, are they the landing pads for aliens? What are they? Big spiders, big hummingbirds, and so on. And you've got other sites where there have been great stone monuments built. Amazing. That are very old, like Ole Tan Tambo. Now you've got the mouth of the mouth of the Amazon River and the source of the Amazon River, both kind of lying on this circle. The same circle that goes through Easter Island and these other places that I'm talking about. And then that circle goes to the mouth of the Tigris-Euphrates River. What do I mean by the mouth? I mean where the river dumps into the sea, flows into the sea. In the case of the Amazon, it's touching its mouth, but its source, where it begins. Tigris and the Euphrates are two rivers which frame Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent, and they're joining towards their terminus and emptying into the Persian Gulf. Then you have the Indus River emptying into the Bay of Bengal, and then the mouth of the Ganges, also lying on this circle. Now that's very interesting, especially when you look at the distances around the circle where these sacred sites are. I already mentioned that there's a phi or golden relationship between Angkor, Giza, and Nazca, the Peru complex. Along the circle, it's 108 degrees from Giza to Nazca. This is a really important precessional number. Precession as in related to precession of the equinoxes. These numbers keep coming up a lot and a lot, like 108, 72 and so on. Actually, the difference in normal longitude between Giza and Angkor Wat is 72 degrees. 72 degrees, you will remember, is 72, you will remember, is the number of years it takes the sun to precess 1 degree backwards through the zodiac in a great year which lasts for 25,920 years. Now, that might just be a coincidence in itself, but you have to balance that against the fact that these ancient monument builders were expert astronomers, because all of these monuments are aligned to key constellations, circumpolar constellations and other constellations, and they can date aspects of their history and even their construction by certain alignments, such that the pattern between the buildings and the monuments on the ground mirrors the pattern of stars in the sky. At Angkor Wat, the pattern of the temple structures relates to the constellation Draco. Just as at Giza, the pyramids, the 3 pyramids there, relate to the stars in Orion's belt. But in their orientation, they seem to be pointing at a time too. In the distant past, like about 10,500 years BC, when there's like a perfect alignment. And they're saying this figure at different points on the globe. Now, our conventional history and archaeology say that human beings were very primitive at that time. We were still hunters and gatherers, and we
think we were primitive.
Yeah, I mean, that's our conventional history, and that maybe agriculture was just about to get going. But we don't think that human beings had the astronomical smarts to build these things with such alignments, you know? I'm not even getting into the engineering of these monuments.
Well, if we had to replicate it today, we couldn't.
I don't know, we probably could with our technology, but there's still unanswered questions.
They can't.
Yeah, some people are saying that they can't. Yeah. I'm just looking at something that's uncontrovertible in the sense of locations on our globe that have been used for monumental architecture.
And marked. Yeah.
Yeah, they've been marked. Places have been left. Now,
for a reason, obviously.
If for those who understand an azimuth projection of the Earth, if you put a point in southeastern Alaska and the azimuth projection is an attempt to sort of flatten the Earth into 2 dimensions looking from a central point. So instead of looking from the North Pole, we're looking at a point from southeastern Alaska as the center of a circle. You can draw a circle connecting all of these places that I mentioned. And it's not an exhaustive list of interesting sites on this circle. you can draw a circle which fits exactly halfway in your total two-dimensional map of the globe, centered on southeastern Alaska. Then we can go into the more regional localities around these. Let's go to Angkor Wat, this Hindu temple complex in Cambodia. Big tourist attraction, of course. Make that the center of a circle, and you can draw a circle, a perfect circle around it, linking places together that are equidistant from Angkor Wat. Now you might get to go out 100 miles or something, but what you'll find is Xi'an in China will put that point on a circle. Now this is a point which represents like a foundational point of Chinese civilization. Just as we looked at Mohenjo-Daro with Indian civilization, Persepolis with the Persian civilization. Xi'an was the ancient imperial capital of China, the starting point for the Silk Road, and the site where all those terracotta warriors are housed. Yeah, really important. Xi'an. Now you describe a circle with Angkor Wat at the center, Xi'an at the periphery. That circle will take in Yonaguni in Japan. What's at Yonaguni? Again, there's a very interesting underwater site. Is there submarine ruins off the coast of near this island Yonaguni I think it's in the Okinawa prefecture in Japan? It's quite controversial, but underwater there is an arrangement of blocks of stone that look very much like platforms and steps or geometrical angles, something that human beings would make rather than something that is naturally formed. Now, not only that, but the arrangements of the blocks resemble blocks at some of these other structures around the globe that I've been talking about. It's a very hot potato because the archaeologists that are keeping the main line don't want to consider the possibility that perhaps that was once above ground and then the sea level rose and submerged this, but it was built thousands and thousands of years ago. It's one possibility. Because that's not a very palatable thought to some, there is a vested interest in arguing that these are just naturally formed structures.
We need the truth. We don't want it to be palatable.
It's still being debated by the experts, but I would encourage the viewers of this to take a look at the Yonaguni ruins.
I'm going to.
And take a kind of underwater tour with the scuba divers and have a look for yourself and ask yourself, do they seem man-made to me or not? Now, we were talking about positions on a circle, you know, about a 2,000 kilometre radius. I can't give you the exact number of kilometres, but it's fixed by these places. Xi'an, Yonaguni, you come down a bit and you get to, what is it, the Barda Valley in Sulawesi, where there is a whole set of interesting megaliths. And then you come across to the island of Java, and this circle goes through the Diem Plateau, which in that part of the world they refer to as the abode of the gods. Floodplain of the Mekong, it's a flat area, it's plateau. But what do we find built there? Borobudur, the biggest Buddhist temple structure in the world. They chose that point as a site. Why that point in central Java? Again, it's on this circle that connects Barda Valley with Yonaguni, with Xi'an, the ancient capital of Imperial China. And who knows what else is on that circle. If you go across to Giza, jump from Angkor Wat as a centre, go to Giza, and let's scribe a circle of a similar but slightly different radius. Again, a few thousand kilometres. Put Rome on the circumference of the circle, whose centre is at Giza, and scribe it. On that circle will be a centre in Russia, Ukraine, not quite sure, but that centre was the source of the Kievan Rus civilization that became the source of Russia. Because Russian civilization and culture began in Kiev. I mean, the Russia that we understand, an Orthodox Christian culture, began when Prince Vladimir accepted Christianity in about 988. Vladimir Putin would be better at giving a talk on this than I am. But it began at that point. And then if you continue that circle around, it goes through some other interesting places as well. One of them is a place in Yemen today, which used to be known as Saba or Sheba. And that's where the Queen of Sheba was thought to have come from, who visited King Solomon. Legend has it that they were lovers, of course, and they had a son whom they named Menelik, and he went on to become a king to his own people, and he brought the religion of ancient Israel down to Ethiopia. And Solomon lived around 1,000 years BC, So we're talking about something that's quite ancient.
Oh, yeah.
Aren't we? Now, Ethiopia, really important from the beginning of, of ancient Israel, but also basically the first nation to become fully Christian around about 330 AD. Ethiopia becomes the first Christian nation. Armenia was early as well. France as a nation didn't become officially Christian till 496, so this is early days. Because you can remember it was really persecuted in the early days, Christianity, and it was an underground movement. So that point there, I think the name of the place today in Yemen may be Marib or something like that, but it used to be Saba or ancient Sheba, and you go along this same circle, centered on Giza, taking in Rome, the Kiev and Rus site. It goes through an area in Ethiopia which has a lot of sacred legend attaching to it. The area around Lake Tana. And the Ethiopian Copts, the Coptic Church, they believe that not far from Lake Tana, in a place called Axum, the Ark of the Covenant is held and guarded by the priests there. Nobody has ever been able to establish this, but the Ethiopians believe it to be the case. They believe it is a very sacred area in their own country and important to the heritage of the world, to the religious, cultural heritage of the world. There are also amazing stone churches just carved out of the rock in this area.
How lovely.
Lake Tana, Ethiopia. There's no bricks and mortar. They're just carved out of the rock.
Nature.
Now, I should just say for those who are not familiar with the Ark of the Covenant, it's sounding very Indiana Jones, but these things you can go and establish for yourself. The Ark of the Covenant in ancient Israel was a box made of acacia wood, but with gold plating it, that was built to house the tablets of the law, the Ten Commandments, and the rod of Aaron, and a bit of the manna that fed the Israelites in the wilderness. And there were cherubim, two golden angels sitting on top of this box, and it had to be carried by the priests. And it was sacred. It was eventually set up in Solomon's temple. But about the time of Jeremiah and the Babylonian captivity, it disappeared. It went absent for centuries. Now, traditional Christians believe that the new Ark of the Covenant is Mary because she housed the Word of God within her, and they point to references in the book of Revelation to back up that proposal. Well, she's the new Ark of the Covenant in heaven, and it was a big thing when St. John wrote the Apocalypse and said, well, that Ark that has just gone missing, well, there she is in heaven today, a living ark that held the Word of God and the bread of life. But what about that old ark? The one that belonged to the ancient Israelites? Was it hidden somewhere? Did Jeremiah hide it somewhere? Was it protected so it wouldn't be destroyed by the Babylonians or taken off? Well, according to the Ethiopians, it's living down there near Lake Tana. It's one of the one of the enigmas on this particular circle that we're describing here. There's another point on that circle, which is a really important heritage site for primitive cave paintings, rock art on the edge of the Sahara Desert. So you've got these two circles, and then you've got, if you take Mohenjo-Daro in India as a point of a circle, which we've mentioned as the source of the Indus Valley civilization, and did a big circle that took in Angkor Wat and Giza, then that circle is in a direct phi proportion to the circle that was centered on Angkor Wat. There are a whole lot of mathematical proportions here in terms of really interesting heritage sites that are equidistant from a certain point. And also, these circles are in mathematical ratio. The big one, centered on Mohenjo-Daro, is 1.618 times the radius of the smaller one centered on Angkor Wat. And the circle goes through Angkor Wat. So it's directly referencing it. All I'm saying is there are a lot of things here that line up. And we did talk about synchronicity in the early days. Now, sometimes we're struck by synchronicities where we notice things happening at the same time, simultaneously or seemingly referencing each other in space and or in time. And it doesn't seem to be satisfying enough to put it down to mere coincidence. So we talk about synchronicity, for want of a better word, which is a connecting principle that's acausal. There's a meaning in this. There's a meaning in all these things I'm talking about. The great circles, the ancient monuments, the Nazca lines, the temples, the mouths of sacred rivers. It would seem that these ancient peoples had a knowledge of, as I say, the dimensions of the earth. But they're not supposed to in the official history. What's going on there? It's a difficult subject to talk about. We think that Antarctica, well, that wasn't meant to be discovered till about the 1800s either, was it? But there do exist maps of Renaissance cartographers, like the Piri-Reis map, which I believe was produced by a Turk in the early 1500s, where it says this map is based on earlier maps. And the map shows an outline of Antarctica. How did they know there was a great southern continent down there?
It's all in the maps, Thomas.
Well, there's a lot that we can sell from maps as well. And what's more, it doesn't show Antarctica exactly as we know its coastline today, but it showed Antarctica as it would have looked in the last ice age.
Probably things have shifted.
Yeah, things have changed a little bit on the surface of the earth over tens of thousands of years, over millions of years. We get bigger changes. There was a time when all the continents were gathered together in one big mass.
Wow.
Yeah, Pangaea, and then they drifted apart. And there were collisions of great land masses which led to upliftments like the Himalayan mountain range. And this is the other thing, that circle of Angkor Wat, it goes through Mount Everest too. That circle that takes in Jian and Yonaguni and Borobudur and so on, also touches Mount Everest, the summit of the world, the highest peak in the Himalayan ranges. Seems like more than a coincidence to me. Anyway, I hope that's given you some food for thought.